Okay, great. We're officially recording. Welcome, everyone. It's a pleasure to welcome you all. My name is Skaidra Podjunaitė, and I'm a member of the Toronto Lithuanian Canadian Community Board. On behalf of our entire board and our entire community, it's really such a joy to be here with you all. And before we officially begin, just like to acknowledge that I'm joining today from the traditional territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, which is now home to many diverse First Nations. These nations and this land are subject to the dish with one spoon wampum between the Anishinaabe and the Shawnee. They're also subject to Treaty 13, known as the Toronto Purchase and the Williams Treaties. These are agreements to peaceably share and care for the land and resources of Toronto. They're about relationships with the land and with each other, and about shared resources and responsibilities. Ultimately, we are all treaty people. So for this exhibition launch, it's such a pleasure to be doing this in partnership with our Lithuanian embassy team to Canada, as well as our broader Canadian-Lithuanian community and our Canadian-Lithuanian Museum of Archives. So without further ado, I'd like to pass the baton over to our ambassador, Darius Kitavičius, our ambassador to Canada, to kick things off and get us going. Ačiū labai, Darius, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Skaidra, and good evening. It's so great to see so many of you joining from different parts of Canada and even from other countries. I see some people joining from Alberta, some from Ottawa, Toronto, Montreal, and many other cities. Great pleasure to see you, and actually, you know, I think most of you heard that this summer there was a great discovery made by all of us jointly, I would say, and we think that now it's time, since now we know what happened. We evaluated that. Those documents are now in Lithuania. People, experts are working with them. So it's a perfect time in the middle of, in between discovery and actual exhibition. We are in the midway. So that's a great point to introduce you to our speakers today, and to present the story more deeper, for you to know what to expect for the next year. And the main person or central figure of this story is a professor, Charles Hopkins, from Toronto, who used to be a neighbor of our consul Gillies in Toronto's widow. And that's where the story started. But I think nobody could tell it in more detail and more interestingly than Mr. Professor Hopkins himself. Therefore, without further ado, I think we all are looking forward into hearing from you, Professor, your part of the story. Feel free. Please know that there will be some other people also speaking in the event, and we foresee that with questions and answers, we should fit into our hour and a bit, maximum hour and a half. But feel free, and really looking forward to hear your presentation.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Ambassador. And thank you for inviting me to be part of this special occasion. My part of the story, I guess, begins in 1972 when I moved onto this street, and I met my neighbor. Vonda Gillis was by then a widow, and she lived in the house next door. And over time, we became, reasonably close. We would talk over the back fence, and occasionally I'd help her a little bit. Someone every spring would bring her baskets of smelts, the fish run, and we'd dig them into her for her rose garden and so on. And I got kind of addicted to her stories. she had a lot of stories of her days being married to the ambassador. She talked to me about their time in Sweden and so on, and about the parties that right after the war, her husband was sort of the ambassador of the government in exile. And they had ceremonial tea parties just over the hill. Our houses back right onto Grenadier Pond. They're not great, huge homes. They're 4 or 5 bedroom homes. And it wasn't unusual to have a consulate on the street. The Japanese consulate was also on this street. And over the time, we've had judges, member of parliament, the mayor of Toronto, Art Eggleton lived on the street and so on. But it's a very small street and pretty close knit. But at any rate, on one of the stories talking about how they brought documents to save them from the Germans, they had somehow moved the documents to Sweden. Sweden being a neutral country during the Second World War. And also, I think her husband was already stationed there. I mean, this is all over 30 years ago, so my memory is not really that great when it comes to real details. But she told me that she had these, some important papers. And one time I was helping her in her basement, and it was unfinished. It was pretty damp and dirty and so on. And she pointed out there were some boxes that were important. Over time, Wanda became ill, and she went in. I think she had a gallbladder operation and so on. She was having a fairly hard time financially. She took in boarders. She did repair, mending and alterations on clothing and so on, and she passed away. Now, I noticed after, when she passed away, the house sat for a while, and then there was a professional cleaning company. They were coming in. She didn't seem to have any relatives or really close friends, and I was going out to work. It was a rainy, cold morning, and I looked over, and there was a huge pile of trash, garbage, and a lot of boxes, some broken furniture, and so on. And so I just walked over, because some of the boxes, old cardboard boxes, they had split and fallen apart. And I looked, and I could see that there were actual books, and what seemed to be books, and later turned out to be documents and so on. So I did the best I could. I picked up most of the boxes and I put them in my garage and then took off and went to work. But it was months before I went back and actually looked at them and saw that these were fairly important papers. So I moved them into my basement, which was finished and nice and dry, and they sat there for quite a while. And then I took and sort of documented them all. I went through, saw what I had. I dropped by the Lithuanian Hall on Bloor Street. And I told them what I had, and they said that they would contact Ottawa and the government. And then a person came, looked at them, but he said he wasn't really all that impressed. And he said if they were of any value, then he would get back to me. Never heard anything about them again. I showed them to different people who, one was the president of a university in Japan, and his eyes just lit up because it had Hirohito's chalk in it, you know, and some said, well, maybe you could just sell the signature, the autographs and so on. Yeah, it was Roosevelt, the Pope, and Lenin, and whatnot. Anyway, I'm affiliated with UNESCO, and to me that, you know, that culturally would be just awful. But at any rate, this past summer, because of COVID, my wife and I would go for drives and look around and so on, and we stumbled upon the Lithuanian cemetery, I think, St. John's, and we saw there was the cultural house there. And so we contacted and said, here's what we have. Would you be interested? And so that's sort of where the story then really took a whole different turn. There was tremendous interest, and I felt so much better that these documents have now found a home, because I remember opening up the map. There was a hand-drawn map, and I hope we'll see some of the documents or pictures of a huge map. It must be 6 or 8 feet square, hand-drawn on what seems to be light canvas and so on. And it's the border of Lithuania going back into the 1920s and so on. So I'm just happy to have been a part of it. And perhaps I can sort of leave it at that point, and we can continue the story if there's interest in going on.
Professor, you are our hero. Really. And you know, those documents were missing, and the story, and here we have in the room, you know, Ambassador Žalys, who is historian by education, and has a very big interest, especially in Gilys archives. And he was searching for those documents for, you know, number of years. And you know, when we brought them back to Lithuania, when experts look, and the director of state archives had a look into it, like, there was no question that those documents for Lithuania, and they have no, you know, no value which you could, you know, it's something invaluable for us. But person you were in contact with, no, maybe before going into Danguolės presentation about, and today she will present virtual exhibition about this great discovery, as we call it. Maybe there are any immediate questions to be asked Professor Hopkins. If there are any, please raise your hands, or I don't see any at the moment. If you would like to ask, please think about. Yes, Vytautas Žalys would like to ask one question.
Dear Professor, that rainy day, you think you managed to save all the documents, or only a part of them? What do you think?
Yeah, it's very hard to say. I think I got most, but there was a huge pile, and it was raining. You know, it was a cold day, and but I think I got most of them. If I had known what I know now, I certainly would have combed through everything. But I took the boxes as best I could. But there could have been individual papers, you know. There could have been other things, because I didn't know what I was really taking.
Okay, thank you very much.
It's very sad that that's where they ended up. But you know, it was just a professional cleaning company who were told to come empty the house, get it ready for sale.
Thank you, Professor, one more time for joining us, and hope you will be able to stay longer to see the actual, you know, exhibition number 1. Let's call it like this, and the follow up. What is being done now in Lithuania, and what are the plans?
Yeah.
Thank you one more time, and with this, I will pass the floor to Danguolė. Before that, I will do the screen sharing. And now, Danguolė, the floor is yours, please.
Thank you. Post-World War I, a nascent country, Lithuania, having declared independence in 1918, is under threat of occupation. In 1939, the Lithuanian Ministry of Foreign Relations sends a valuable document collection to the diplomatic head of Lithuania's mission in Sweden, Minister Vytautas Gylys. There is evidence that the collection arrived in Sweden, but when Minister Gylys and his wife immigrate to Canada in 1949, speculation that the collection may not have reached Canadian shores begins. This lasts for more than 70 years until April of this year, when the Lithuanian Museum Archives of Canada received a phone call from Professor Charles Hopkins. Our part of the story is told in the virtual exhibition, Long Journey Home, Great Discovery. It's found on our website, lithuanianheritage.ca, and is also available in Lithuanian. The first connection that we had to the Gylys documents was through an exhibition held here in our museum in 2014, where we learned about Vytautas Gylys and his diplomatic life. And here we present a few photos from that exhibition in 2014. It was curated by the Lithuanian Embassy in Canada, and it was sponsored by Donata Garbaliauskienė. These are just some photos from the exhibition. And here we have a presentation by the ambassador Vytautas Žalys explaining the document. Although a private citizen, Vytautas Gylys was the honorary consul general of Lithuania while living in Canada. The next part of our story takes us to this year and a phone call from Charles Hopkins about the possible donation of a collection of documents to our archive. As you can see, we received several boxes of material which were immediately put into quarantine due to COVID restrictions at that time. Before formalizing the donation, it was important to do an inventory of the material. There were 30 bilateral treaties, 14 folders containing Lithuania's Ministry of Foreign Relations working documents, 8 single documents, and a small number of damaged documents. If you counted the individual documents within the 14 folders, we estimate that the entire collection was made up of approximately 250 to 300 items in total. The time period 1920 to 1939 represented the 20 short years of Lithuania's independence after 123 rules of rule by Imperial Russia. After first government departments were formed, The newly independent country needed to show an international presence through bilateral treaties, and most importantly, to secure its borders. Among the first treaties the Republic of Lithuania negotiated was the peace treaty with Soviet Russia, establishing clear borders and responsibilities of two sovereign nations. This was signed in Moscow in July of 1920. Another important bilateral treaty with Latvia gave Lithuania direct access to the Baltic Sea, and this was signed in January of 1931. Later treaties with many other countries established trade relationships and maritime rights. From the start, the new country demonstrated its outward interest. There were a large number of ministry working documents in these folders. And what we've done is we've reproduced some samples of those documents. The first one is a treaty between Lithuania and the Evangelical Church. There was a concern from the Evangelical Church about their rights in the Klaipėda region. And as you can see, it was signed in 1925. This is a document which is called a plein pouvoir, which is a power of attorney. And this particular one is signed by President Antanas Smetona. The other document that we're highlighting is a prisoner exchange protocol between the Republic of Lithuania and the Russian Soviet Federated Socialist Republic, as it was known in 1933. And in this exchange, there is one name, I think, that will be familiar to a lot of the people here. And we've highlighted.
Theofilis Matulionis.
Theofilis Matulionis. This is a ratification document for Lithuania joining the International Court of Justice, signed by President Aleksandras Stulginskis. We have a regulation, a treaty for the regulation of a moratorium on a deferred loan between Lithuania and the United States, signed by President Herbert Hoover. And the next document is actually another plein pouvoir, power of attorney. And this particular one is in Russian. And of course, my Russian knowledge of Russian language is non-existent. And so what we needed to do was to find out what this document was about. So one of our volunteers here, Aleksandras Vlavichus, who's been here since 2014, was studying Russian with a tutor based in Sao Paulo, Brazil. So we, on their next Zoom session in terms of his lesson, we asked just to get an idea of what this document is about. We did not want to know word for word what the document said, but the most important thing was that we were able to find the signature at the bottom on the right as Vladimir Ulyanov, also known as Lenin, and this is the actual signature there. Damaged documents are now with the Central Archive of Lithuania, where experts will be able to determine if anything at all is salvageable, but this is what they look like. And finally, we show the collection of the bilateral treaties with signatures of major historical figures of that time period. And I will go through them very quickly and invite you to spend much more time on this particular area of the exhibition so that you can get the full idea of what these documents are about. The most important one, of course, is the peace treaty between Lithuania and the Russian Federation of 1920. And this is the treaty, I believe, that Charles was referring to that has the map. The next one is a ratification instrument of the same treaty. This is the extension of the peace treaty signed in 1931. This is the peace treaty between Lithuania and the Ukraine. This is a treaty with Great Britain and Lithuania and the signature of King George V of Great Britain. This is Pope Pius the 11th. I'll just go through some of the other ones really quickly. This one is an interesting one. It's a fishery treaty between the German Weimar Republic and the Republic of Lithuania, signed by President of the German Weimar Republic, Paul von Hindenburg. President of the United States, Calvin Coolidge. This is Franklin Roosevelt, President Franklin Roosevelt. And the most interesting treaty, the most beautiful treaty visually was the Treaty of Commerce and navigation between Japan and Lithuania, which had the stamp of the Emperor Hirohito of Japan. And once the inventory was completed and the donation confirmed, the next step was to contact Ambassador Darius Kusavičius to begin the process of returning the documents to Lithuania. They were returned this summer, are now at the Central Archives of Lithuania. And I can say with absolute certainty that having had an opportunity to play even a small part in the story of this incredible document collection has been truly a unique experience in my lifetime. And just one more thing, if you're interested in getting a fuller picture of the entire story, there are 3 additional sources that I can recommend. 2 of them are from the virtual exhibitions from the Central Archive of Lithuania. One is called Diplomatas Vytautas Gylys, which describes the diplomatic life of Vytautas Gylys. The other one is entitled Lietuvos pasiuntinybė Maskvoje šimtas, and that describes the negotiation of the peace treaty with Russia, which was the critical document in the collection. And you can even see photos of a photo of the delegates that actually signed the document that we were looking at previously. And lastly, if you would like to get an overview of the Gylys document collection prior to 2021, there is an article called Dinge tarp Stokholmo ir Toronto, Lost Between Stockholm and Toronto, in the Lithuanian Canadian newspaper called Tėviškė Žiburiai. And Skaidra will be sending the links out to everyone so that you can have a look at them yourselves. Thank you very much.
Well, so much for presentation. We had a quick tour through all of the exhibition, and thank you one more time for, you know, when I think about what really happened this summer, how would everything look like if Canada would have another policy towards Soviet Union and occupation of Baltic states? Canada never recognized our incorporation, and therefore we had a possibility to have consuls operating in Canada. Therefore, Gylys could perform his duties here. If not Canada's immigration policy, what would be happening then? Because of accepting all Lithuanians who were running, you know, from those terrible conditions in different periods of history, not going into that, but as a result, having strong Lithuanian community, as a result, having strong Lithuanian organizations, and as one of the results, having museum archives here, because Professor Hopkins had to call somewhere, and that was the plaque he found, and that was the number he dialed. And what if those things would be happening otherwise? What if Professor Hopkins wouldn't go that early rainy morning into work? For me, it sounds, after more than 80 years declared missing, like a miracle. What happened here, thanks to people I've already mentioned. And Danguolė did a sneak peek into what we have in those documents, but I'm sure that when they will become available for society, and of course the nicest pictures are of the treaties, but there were many other documents from MFA, Ministry of Foreign Affairs archives, And at least from my look into it, it looks like most important documents, all of them, like treaties with all the protocols, etc., etc., etc. They are there. And now I think it would be okay. There is a question to.
Yeah, there's two questions. So one is, if we can, was there any connection to France, given that many Lithuanian students studied there? Not sure if anyone can jump in and maybe kind of give some thought to that. And then the second question, more for Professor Hopkins, if you're still with us, at what point did you realize the significance of these documents and what was your initial reaction? Maybe we'll go to Professor Hopkins because I see you've just come back
Yeah.
online.
Yeah, if you'd like. My initial reaction was that these look important and I should hold on to them. But the real importance came secondly, when I actually opened them up. This is almost a year later, when I had them in the house, opened them all up, and saw what they were. Then there was a third time, and this is just a couple of months ago, when the ambassador gave me a brief history of Lithuania. And I started reading through, and in the history book, it talks about the trip to meet with the emperor or with the representative of Japan, because that would have been strategic for them to get a treaty with Japan at that time, and a special trip was made to Germany in order to do it, and so on. And then you see the strategy behind that government, who was so young, just that sort of a 15-year-old, 10-year-old government, trying to build a strategic presence by getting these kinds of treaties. So it's an important part, I think, of the history of a country where you have people who have, for so many centuries, been under the rule of others, whether it's Denmark, Russia, Sweden, Poland, whatever, but able to maintain themselves as a culture. So this is, I'm stumbling a bit now, so I'll stop. But I see now that it really was an important bit to have from that little blip of 20 years as a country, to see what people did strategically to survive as a nation. Yeah.
Thank you, Professor. And I see in chat that there is the same question for Danguolė. When did you realize the importance?
Well, interestingly enough, as I was speaking to Professor Hopkins on the phone, and almost in that very first contact that we had, as he started, I asked him to describe the documents. Where did they come from? What could he tell me about them? And I started, as he started describing them and talking about a diplomat in Sweden, and I had just finished reading the article that I was referencing in Tėviškės Žiburiai that talked about the story of these missing documents. I had read it, just months before. So even as in that first phone call, as you were describing them, I was like, you've got to be kidding. These documents have shown up. I couldn't believe it.
We have one more comment by Daiva Jogelis from Montreal, saying that heartfelt thanks to Professor Hopkins for his perseverance to find the right hands into which he could give this treasure trove. Really, I can confirm that Danguolė's hands are the right hands to give it to. I see Algis Jaugelis from British Columbia is raising his hand. Algi, please.
Yes. One thing that really surprises me is that Mr. Gilis somehow did not have, that nobody seemed to know except him, that these documents existed. And I don't know when he died, but in a way, it's tragic that the existence of these documents was so secret that they could have been lost. And I'm wondering if we have any speculation about how that could have happened. Did he die prematurely without, without anyone knowing the existence of these documents? I'm just curious if we know anything about that, I guess.
I think, at least from what I hear here in the panel, we wouldn't be willing to speculate this time at opening of this virtual exhibition with versions, what, why, etc. Let's leave those questions, maybe as one of the for next time.
Okay, but sure.
Now let's switch into what's next. Because
but I must say, I think it's really wonderful and remarkable that we have these documents, because I'm sure they're very important to Lithuania, as for many reasons. And I must say that I'm thrilled to be present here today and to learn about this. It's a very exciting find, and very happy to share in this. So thank you.
Algi, thank you. So maybe I will just shortly jump into my part of the story, and that was actually Danguolė who wrote me one day of the summer. It was midday, and I received an email that sit down, have a glass of champagne, and call me. I have great news to tell you. And I thought, in the middle of the day, I cannot drink champagne. I have many things to do. But I don't have this patience, and I called Danguolė immediately saying, what happened? What happened? What do you have? Do you have champagne? No, I don't have champagne yet, but please tell me. And immediately, I think she sent me, photos, several photos, and Vytautas Žalys was the person I contacted the same day, forwarding those photos and asking, what do you think? And I think for everybody who participated in this process, when you see those documents, you understand that for them to be fake, it would be too expensive, and they look really real. And then I saw photos. For me, it was clear that those are originals, and that this is the greatest finding, most probably we ever had as a Ministry of Foreign Affairs, for sure. That's the greatest finding ever, thanks to Mr. Hopkins, Danguolė, and others who made us to be here. But with this, and then it was quick. We tried to having such a treasure be it in museum archives or being at the embassy, and announcing it publicly might have been too dangerous. And we thought we had to do it as fast as possible, being as silent as long as possible. And then, several weeks later, we organized, after Danguolė, she did the inspection. We prepared all the, agreements on transfer of the documents. And then I was heading to ministry to give it to the minister. And the next thing to do was, short sneak peek exhibition of what Lithuania just got, what just received, and then transferring it directly to central state archives. And we have director of the State Archives here, Mr. Dalius Žižys. And gerbiamas direktoriau, jeigu galit, kas toliau vyksta su tais dokumentais?
Hello, everybody. I will speak Lithuanian language. You understand, I think. Sveiki visi. Kas toliau? Gal aš pradėsiu truputį dar nuo toliau, kai aš tik sužinojau apie tą atrastą lobį. Tai yra mano ir Vytauto turbūt svajonė, kad atsirastų tas archyvas. Aš tuo metu buvau atostogose, sodyboje, įlipęs į medį, pjoviau nudžiūvusią šaką. Ir būčiau išrykęs, Vytautas paskambino kaip tik man, aš griebiau telefoną, sakau, palauk, nulipsiu nuo medžio, nes iškrysiu, sulaužysiu ranką ar koją ir ta istorija nebus tokia laiminga. Tai yra labai svarbus atradimas, mes labai džiaugiamės, kad tie dokumentai pakliuvo į Lietuvą. Aš 22 metus dirbau archyvuose ir tai yra didžiausias per tuos metus dokumentų atradimas, nors esame nemažai gavę įvairių dokumentų, kurie buvo išblaškyti po visą pasaulį. Ir jeigu juos visus archyvo saugomus dokumentus, o mes saugome 33 km lentynų dokumentų, sudėtumėme piramidę, tai šitie dokumentai būtų pačioj piramidės viršūnėje ir dar turbūt aukso dulkėmis apibarstyti reikėtų, kad įrodyti jų vertę. Kas toliau?
Galima aš trumpai tik tais direktorių trumpą summary padarysiu vis tiek, that director, when he heard about this great discovery, he was in the tree cutting, doing some cutting, and almost fell off the tree, but not. But that was the beginning for the director. And additionally, he told that in State Archives, in his institution, he's director of, they have 33 kilometers of important documents, shelves of important documents they are saving. But if they would be constructing a pyramid from those shelves, documents which were discovered, and we are talking about here, would be at the very, very top of this pyramid.
Kai mes gavom šitos dokumentus, pirmiausia, mūsų specialistai, restauratoriai juos apžiūrėjo ir nustatė, kad jie yra pažeisti, kad visuose dokumentuose, nors jie yra ir gražus, yra nematomas kenkėjas, grybelis, pelėsis, kurį reikia sunaikinti. Tie dokumentai buvo patalpinti į specialią kamerą dezinfekavimo, kuris specialiais chemikalais, net ne chemikalais, bet gamtinės medžiagos buvo tie pelėsiai nužudyti. Dabar tie dokumentai yra saugus ir toliau nebijo sugedimo. Matyt ekrane turbūt dokumentus, kurie visiškai buvo sukelyje, sutropėję. Mūsų restauratoriai juos irgi konservavo, sutvarkė, juos dabar galima ir skaityti, ir eksponuoti. Toliau kas vyksta? Toliau vyksta archyvistų istorikų darbas, tyrant šitos dokumentus, juos aprašant, sutvarkant pagal archyvinę tvarką, sunumeruojant kiekvieną puslapį, aprašant juos ir kad dokumentai su archyviniais dokumentais, bylomis. Tada prasideda kitas darbas, prasideda pasirengimas tam, kad tie dokumentai būtų matomi visuomeniai. Mes vasaros viduryje ateinančių metų ruošiamės padaryti didelę parodą, juos eksponuoti visuomeniai. Šitam projekte dalyvauja Lietuvos Respublikos užsienio reikalų ministerija, Lietuvos Respublikos Seimas, muziejus Valdovų rūmai, Lietuvos centrinis valstybės archyvas, na ir kiek mes šiandien kalbėjome, Kanados lietuvių muziejus archyvas. Visuomeniai bus pristatyti ne tik tie dokumentai, bet ir jų atsiradimo istorija, bus lydima fotografijomis, aprašymais, bus galima vartyti skaitmeninius dokumentus, suskaitmenintus tas sutartis, pamatyti žemėlapius. Labai sudėtingas darbas yra restauruoti tą Lietuvos taikos sutartį su Rusija. Ypač tas žemėlapis, jis yra milžiniško dydžio, kiek Vytautai 3 metrai skersai ir 2,6 metro išilgai statmenai. Mes neradom tokio stalo, ant kurio ištiesti, teko jį ištiesinėti ant grindų. Bet tai tikrai didžiulis lobis. Aš labai dėkingas visiems žmonėms, kurie prisidėjo, profesoriui Hopkinsui, Danguoliai, ambasadoriui, nes tai yra archyvinė prasme, tai yra, na nežinau, kaip gintaro kambarį rast ar kažką tai panašaus. Tai dar kartą ačiū.
Actually, Director, just briefly, that Director just told that experts, even if it was invisible with a naked eye, but experts found out that all documents were contaminated with fungus and had to be immediately disinfected and decontaminated. After that, after doing this cleaning of the documents, now archivists and historians are working on creating those archival cases of the documents and making clear what is in each of the cases. And now, as archives, together with Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Grand Duke's Palace, Parliament in Lithuania, and as agreed today, earlier today in the meeting with Danguolė Zapovičiūtė Green, Canadian Lithuanian Museum archives are working hardly to prepare for showing those documents to the public next summer. And as I know, the plan is to have them available to see for the society in Grand Duke's Palace, and most probably on 6th of July. This is the plan. One thing I haven't mentioned, what Professor Hopkins was mentioning about big map. Size of the map. Sorry, I'm not good at inches. It's 3 meters on 2.6 meters. That's the size of the map, and it's being also restored. So lots of work ahead, but that's what is being done.
The map is very damaged, and
Okay.
it's very hard to restore it.
Okay. But there is one more copy of the map in the ratification document.
But it's not the same map. It's a little bit different.
Okay.
It's printed after the 1 year or 2 years in Russia. And this which is damaged is original, with stamps and signs of all participation. Yeah.
Maybe I would now turn to former ambassador of Lithuania to Canada, who was part of 2014 exhibition. We have a banner also here, Long Journey Home, which looks like now we will have to add several words, as we did with this part of the exhibition. Great discovery. Vytautai, share your thoughts with us.
Okay, Your Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, I would like to add just a few words to this happy and almost detective story. Half a year ago, the only source for researchers who studied Lithuania's foreign policy during interwar period who were looking for agreements and treaties signed by Lithuania with foreign countries, foreign states, were two very impressive volumes of Lithuanian treaties with foreign countries. The first volume was published by MFA in 1930, and the second one, 1939. In these two volumes, 204 treaties and agreements were published, which were signed by Lithuania with 31 foreign states during the period of 1990-1939. The problem was that at the Lithuanian Central State Archives, there were no original copies of those treaties. They somehow vanished. For many years, we were firmly convinced that the original of those treaties are kept in Moscow. In other words, it was believed that after the occupation and annexation, the Soviets took those treaties out and later on forgot to return them back to Lithuania. Around 2010, the former Minister of Foreign Affairs of Lithuania, Audronis Ažubalis, asked me to pay an official visit to Moscow to discuss this sensitive issue with the leadership of the diplomatic archives of the Russian Federation. In Moscow, I was told that during the first days of the war, when Soviets were rapidly withdrawing from Lithuania, a train transporting the archives of the Lithuanian MFA from Kaunas to Moscow was bombed at the Minsk railway station by the Germans, and all documents burned down. Well, this was an open lie. They simply forgot that in the mid-60s, a part of the MFA archive returned back to Lithuania from Moscow. What I'm trying to say, that at that time, we did not even doubt that a significant part of Lithuanian MFA archives, including the originals of international treaties and other highly important documents, are still in Moscow. And then something unexpected happened. I remember I was working on the first volume of my history of Lithuanian diplomacy, reading the correspondence between Lithuanian MFA and Lithuania's legation in Stockholm. And here we are, approximately 2 weeks after the beginning of the Second World War. Lithuanian envoy in Sweden, Vytautas Gilys, in one of his telegrams to MFA, was asking about 2 boxes which the legation had received from Kaunas, with a strict order to put them in a safe place while the war was going on. In another telegram from MFA, it was clarified that the boxes contain the originals of Lithuania's international treaties. In this way, we learned something very important. When the war broke out, Lithuania's international treaties were taken to neutral Sweden. Then the question arose, what happened to those treaties after the occupation, when the Soviets took over the Lithuanian legation in Stockholm? Available information was contradictory. All we knew was that our envoy Vytautas Gilys had managed to save part of the legation archive. The other part fell into the hands of Soviets. Part of the legation archive which Vytautas Gilys was able to save, later on was relocated to the Swedish National Archives. Together with director Dalius Žižys, we went to Stockholm, and after negotiations with the general director of Swedish National Archives, we had reached an agreement to return those documents back to Lithuania. However, the originals of the international treaties were not among them. Later on, we had learned that the original copies of Lithuania's international treaties were kept at the private house of Giliai in Toronto, although what happened to them after the death of both Vytautas and Vanda Giliai, we didn't know. They seemed to be gone forever. So, thanks to Mr. Hopkins, those treaties are back to Lithuania, back to life. And dear professor, I believe that you managed to save probably all the documents, because the MFA sent to Sweden 50 kilograms of treaties, those boxes, 50 kilograms. And our ambassador from...
I've sent 50 kilograms
Yes.
of documents to Vilnius.
So I believe all documents are back. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ambassador Žalys. And I can only echo what Gabija Petrauskienė just said. Thank you for excellent presentation, particularly Ambassador Žalys, for explaining the importance of these documents so clearly. Ačiū. And really, I think that Ambassador Žalys is the one who is really one of the biggest experts of Gilys' story. Therefore, we are really happy to have you, Ambassador, and you, Director, here this evening with us. And that wouldn't be possible because usually our events are in the evening. And usually at that time you are sleeping. If you are in Vilnius, I know that you are jet lagged, but hope you will accept several questions if there will be any in the audience. So I think we finished our presentations, and really after all those explanations, it's a great, if not greatest, discovery for Ministry of Foreign Affairs. One more time, thanks to all the participants, and I'm looking to hear questions. Please raise your hands or write in chat. If you would be raising your hands, it would be easier for us to see.
Mes turim klausimų nuo Raimondas. Gal Raimondai, jeigu dar esi čia, galėtum paklausti.